looking at some new offense that the Phillies have acquired for this upcoming season, the Phillies pitching in 2017, and so much more on this edition of Phillies Talk Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Phillies Talk for January 29th, 2017. And we only have 16 more days till spring training. Pitchers and catchers are reporting right around Valentine's Day, so it's a great time to be a baseball fan. Just a few short weeks away to something a lot of us have been waiting for several months since the season ended back in October of 2016. Of course, the Phillies made a couple great changes in the offseason. Not so sure that they're great, but we'll be optimistic as we try to be on this show. And I want to turn the attention to the Patreon page here for Fightin' Phillies podcast, Phillies Talk Podcast. And you can find my Patreon page over at Patreon, that's patreon.com/Phillies. And that's where you can go and subscribe and help the podcast out by your monthly subscription, so to speak, to the show. Anywhere from $1 on up, you can donate. And believe it or not, I just got the first subscriber to the Phillies Patreon page, and I'm really excited. And I want to thank that person for sponsoring the show. It's not easy to put these podcasts together. It does take little resources and some money to get it out on the air to the listeners. So that's why I'd like to make this sort of a listener-supported podcast. For anyone who's been with the show for a long time, you know we've had ads on here from time to time to help support the podcast. But here's another method for you, the listener, to jump on in and support the podcast. A lot of podcasts out there sort of have a lot of subscribers. So if just about 10% of the subscribers of this podcast and the listeners of the podcast happen to drop $1 or $2 a month over to the show, it could really greatly expand it. Do some great things with that. And, of course, all the proceeds would be put back into the podcast. So I'd like to invite everybody to go over to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Phillies and make your small donation to this podcast. And I'd love to get some feedback from the listeners on how you like the Phillies Talk podcast to run in the off season. I've been doing only one podcast a month since the season ended. And as spring training and the regular season starts up, I'll probably bring it up to at least 3 a month or maybe even 4, a weekly show. But I'd like your feedback. And if you'd like to send it in to me, send me an email at rich@fightinphillies.com. I'd love to hear back from the listeners. Would you like to hear more podcasts in the off season? You know, I do have a lot of subscribers, and but I haven't heard too much from you. So please send an email in, and I'll try to adjust the show that way. Well, now on the show, we're going to take a little bit of a look at some of the new players that we'll be seeing in 2017 on the Phillies team. And probably the top free agent that the Phillies went out and got last season is Howie Kendrick, coming in from the L.A. Dodgers. Kendrick was kind of unhappy in L.A. He wanted to play more. He wanted to get more at-bats. He basically wanted to get out on the field and do what he can do better. So he'll get that chance this year with the Phillies, probably be playing out in left field for the Phils. Let's take a look at some of the stats he's had with the L.A. Dodgers. Of course, he was with them in 2015 and 2016. Let's see, in 2015 with the Dodgers, his batting average was .295. That's pretty decent. The Phillies could use a close to 300 hitter. In 2016, he dropped down to .255 with the Dodgers. And, of course, he was in 146 games in 2016. Maybe he was just having an off year. Even had more at-bats than he had his first go-around with the Dodgers. Of course, Kendrick is going to be 33 years of age here in the 2017 season. So he is starting to get a little older. And we've seen from some of the great Phillies players in the past few seasons, that's about, unfortunately, the year where a lot of hitters start to take a decline unless anything happens to change where they can help themselves in that area. Kendrick's career started out in 2006. He's a 22-year-old, came up with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, played 72 games in his first year in the bigs, and his batting average then was .285. Taking a look at his all-time lifetime batting average here, he's a .289 hitter, so that's something that the Phillies are going to take advantage of this season in 2017. Hopefully he'll extend that and be able to get that 300 area type of hitter. That's what the Phillies sorely needed, just an extra couple of hits here and there. It's going to make a big difference. Kendrick only had 40 RBIs last year behind 8 home runs, so he'd have to pick that up a little bit, you would think. He's not a big home run hitter. His average over the years that he's been in baseball is 11 home runs a season, and he averages 72 RBIs in a season. So, if he can match those numbers in 2017, I think the Phillies will be very happy with their investment. And I'm optimistic about Kendrick. I think this is going to be a year for him to prove himself beyond what he's done already in his career. He was an all-star back in 2011 with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. But he really hasn't done all that much since as far as greatness, so to speak, in the game. So Howie Kendrick, he's our first highlighted player here on the Phillies in 2017. It would be interesting to see how he breaks out with the team. And, of course, the Phillies traded 2 players in exchange for Howie Kendrick. So it'll be interesting to see how Darren Ruff makes out there in L.A., and also Darnell Sweeney, which I kind of thought the Phillies were going to take a bigger chance with over a couple-year period, but now he's back with the Dodgers, so it'll be interesting to see how he does out there with the team that drafted him in the L.A. Dodgers. Well, let's look at a free agent that the Phillies picked up in the offseason. Michael Saunders from the Toronto Blue Jays. Saunders is a career American League player. I haven't really followed his career all that much. Haven't really heard too much about him. For many of his years, he's been a Seattle Mariner. Broke into the league in 2009 as a 22-year-old and played with Seattle all the way through 2014, and then was dealt off to the Toronto Blue Jays in 2015 and 2016. One of the knocks about Saunders has been that he's not really an overall healthy type of player. When he is on the field, they say he's very good. Of course, he's also an all-star, and that just happened last year for him. He had a breakout season last year, and who knows, maybe it was because he was going to be a free agent this year. But he put up numbers similar to what we saw from Dominic Brown from a few years ago when he had his breakout year. He hit 24 home runs, did Saunders, last year, 57 RBIs. You had to go back to 2012 to see him have a similar year. Back then with the Seattle Mariners, he hit 19 home runs and 57 RBIs for the Mariners. So I guess it depends which Michael Saunders will be getting in Philadelphia in 2017. The Phillies paying him pretty well, too. I think during his whole career up to this point, he's earned about $9 million plus in his whole career. And now the Phillies are going to pay him $9 million for 1 year to play for the Phils. So not a cheap acquisition for the Phillies is Saunders. He also has a team option for 2018 that would go to $11 million. So you kind of get the feeling that the Phillies are sort of playing a poker hand with Saunders, probably thinking that he didn't have a fluke year last year, and he'll be able to do something similar this year for the Phillies. Saunders is 6'4", 225 pounds, big guy. So hopefully he'll find Citizens Bank Park to his liking. Who knows? Maybe it'll increase his home run productivity and RBIs in the 2017 season. So there's a quick look at two players that the Phillies will have new on the field for 2017. Both of the guys are, very similar if you want to compare certain things. Saunders and Kendrick are very similar in age. They're really not superstar impact players, but both have been named all-stars during their careers. And both are what you would call good middle-level type of players. They put up some good numbers from time to time. And that's what the Phillies have needed. Last season, they needed some offense desperately. Maybe some of these guys that the Phillies picked up in Saunders and Kendrick will have a positive impact. Maybe bring Michael Franco up a little bit more, be able to score some more runs in 2017 and get this kick-started a little bit. This offense has been terrible. Of course, we have a new batting coach in 2017. Matt Stairs taking over for fired Phillies batting coach Steve Henderson for the new upcoming season. And it'll be very interesting to see the changes that are taking place in the batting under Matt Stairs. If you remember him as a Phillies broadcaster, he would very much critique a lot of the batting from the players. From an interesting standpoint, he would be the color commentary guy on the program, so he would point out different things that the batters weren't possibly doing as well as they could be. And that experience that he has is going to transcend over to the Phillies, and it'll be great to see if the Phillies can pick up some offense due to some of his critiquing of the batting style of some of the Phillies. Well, jumping away from the players for a moment, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the pitching in a few minutes, the new pitchers that the Phillies will have for 2017. And there was a rumor a couple days ago over on ESPN.com. It was a rumor that Pete Mackanin may be in line for an extension from the Phillies. And this will be Mackanin's second full season as a manager of the Philadelphia Phillies. And I'm wondering how the listeners feel about that. I kind of would sort of be against that. I think Pete Mackanin is a good manager, but I just didn't see the improvement or the subtle changes that he had said would take place with the Phillies as far as base running, fielding, proper playing of the game. I know he constantly stresses that in the offseason, but we just did not see the tutelage that he apparently gave the Phillies in spring training transcend over to the field. So I'm not in the camp that would recommend an extension for Pete Mackanin. I'd rather see the Phillies play out this season, see what they can do. Of course, if the Phillies do really well, then it's a no-brainer. I think you stay with Mackanin, but if they tank and they do poorly the way they did at the end of the season last year, then you have to go a different direction with this team. It's obvious that Mackanin and a few of the others that are on the coaching staff just are not getting the job done. And again, I'm giving them the 2017 season as well, but I would certainly not extend him before the end of the 2017 season. you have a different viewpoint, I'd love to hear it. Just send it in to me. Send me an email or a voicemail. You can go right to the fightinphillies.com page. And if you have a computer with a microphone available on it, or even you could use your iPod earbuds that have a microphone, you can just send me a voicemail. There's a handy voicemail box on the left-hand side of the blog, and I'd love to hear your comments. Even like to get them on a future upcoming Phillies Talk podcast. So send me your comments about Pete Mackanin or anything else concerning the Phillies right from the fightinphillies.com blog or my email address, rich@fightinphillies.com. Well, we're going to take a short commercial break here in the show. We're going to come back with a few notes about opening day in 2017 and a flashback to 1950 right after these messages from Fightin' Phillies, the Phillies Talk podcast.
Hi, this is Farley.
And Mark from Baseball PhD.
Thanks for listening to BaseballPodcast.net.
Up next, another great episode of Phillies Talk.
Hi, this is Gary Matthews. You're listening to Fightin' Phillies Talk podcast.
Brewtown Sports is your source for Brewers news and notes. Join Mr. Brewtown as he keeps you up to date on all the happenings of your Milwaukee Brewers and Major League Baseball. Follow the show on Facebook and Twitter, Brewtown Sports. Listen 24/7 at brewtownsports.podomatic.com.
Hi, this is Gary Mack of Mets Musing, and you're listening to my good friend Rich Baxter on Phillies Talk, right here on BaseballTalkRadio.com, the home of great baseball talk shows.
Welcome back to the Phillies Talk podcast, everyone. Great commercial break there. I love BaseballTalkRadio.com, not only because I produced it and made it, but it's a great place for me to keep track of a lot of baseball podcasts I really love. And that's the reason I made BaseballTalkRadio.com, by the way, is, you know, I was constantly searching for different opinions and shows similar to the one you're listening to here, independent shows that don't really talk just about the official news of the club, but offer opinions and advice and things like that. So that's what drew me in to search for a lot of baseball podcasts. Of course, being a podcaster myself, I just thought it was a natural thing to try to group them all together. And it's a great community there. So stop on over and check it out, BaseballTalkRadio.com. Well, talking about opening day for 2017 on the Phillies, of course, it's April 7th this year, and it's usually a little chilly. You almost have to wear some gloves that day. Usually there's a sort of a biting cold still left to the winter, even though it's so close to spring. It's just not warm enough yet in the Philadelphia area usually to be very comfortable at opening day. But in the past few years, it was very hard to get opening day tickets to see the Phillies. But this year is a little an exception, and the Phillies have been running a promotion where you can get a couple of seats and a Phillies gift card over the past couple days, and they're calling it the opening day bundle. And you used to really have to buy a 10-game plan or something like that in years past, or certainly a 3 or 4 game plan bundled along with this opening day ticket, so to speak. It was a tough ticket to get in town, but all of a sudden now with the downturn in the team in the last few years, it's made it easier for everybody that wants to see the team on opening day to get tickets. So head on over to Phillies.com. Let's make sure it's a sellout for opening day. It's hard to believe that you have to talk about a sellout being a potential issue in 2017 for the Phillies, especially on opening day. Of course, looking back to the great run of sellouts that the Phillies had at Citizens Bank Park. Of course, they moved in there in 2004, which is now many, many moons ago. Wow, it's hard to believe that the Phillies have been at that ballpark for so many years now. And they started selling out back in July of 2009, and that sellout streak went all the way to 2012 of consecutive home sellouts, several years worth of them. And I wonder if we'll ever see that again in our lifetimes as Phillies fans, if we'll ever see a hot streak like that continue, selling 41,000 seats a night for that many nights in a row is certainly an amazing feat in itself. So get on out there and get your opening day tickets. Go up to the Fightin' Phillies, or actually the Phillies.com website, and you can purchase them. I was on the web today a little earlier before I did the show, researching a little opening day things. And on YouTube, which I'd like to add a note that the Phillies Talk podcast is now on YouTube. You can get the link right from the website over at fightinphillies.com. Just another avenue to listen to the show here. But I saw a post from someone with the 1950 opening day Phillies. They had some video on there, and they also had a string band recording of a song called "The Fightin' Phil." So I wanted to play a little bit of that, about a minute and a half or so here, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Here it goes. A great song there, The Fighting Phils, and that's how they played it. In 1950 for opening day, they had the whole string band down there in the crowd playing that, of course, all mic'd up there in 1950, and that was a great time for the Phillies. In fact, the 50s were a great generation for the Phillies. A lot of great things happened in the country. And, of course, The Fighting Phils there, that is a song that was performed by the Delaware County String Band. It was taken off a 78 record. I wonder how many people out there remember a 78 RPM record. Probably not many of you. Well, that's another story and another show. Moving on with the show here, we're going to take a few looks at the new pitching staff that should be on the mound for the Phillies for this upcoming season. A little commentary about that before we end this show. And again, send me your emails. Would you like to hear more Phillies Talk podcasts per month? Send them in over to rich@fightinphillies.com. Well, we were talking a little earlier about how poorly the Phillies have batted in 2016. Let's just go over a couple of those key stats before we forget them. 29th in the league in batting average with a .240 batting average last year. Home runs, they were 24th in the league with 161 home runs. And runs batted in, they were last in the entire Major League Baseball league with 575 runs batted in. The average team batted in 692 runs last year, so the Phillies finishing dead last in those offensive stats. Moving on to the pitching here for 2017, the Phillies looking up as far as their pitchers are concerned. They acquired Clay Buchholz in the offseason. And Buchholz is one of those pitchers where he's kind of streaky, if we can remember back to Kyle Kendrick. Some games he would look great for the Phillies on the mound, and then the next game he was batted out of the ballpark practically, giving up 7-8 runs in an inning and not even lasting 3 innings. So unfortunately, that's the word on Buchholz. He had been a very good pitcher at times for the Red Sox, but very few Red Sox fans were sad to see him go when he got traded out to the Phillies and signed by them. Let's take a look at a few of the Clay Buchholz stats here. He broke into the league as a 22-year-old in 2007. He went 3-1 back then. Only appeared in 4 games for the Red Sox. He's been with Boston his whole career, which now has spanned 10 years. The Phillies chapter will start his 11th year in baseball. And last year with the Red Sox, he was 8-10. He had a 4.78 ERA. So I think that's sort of that up and down type of pitcher that we've been describing here on this podcast. In 2010, Buchholz was 17-7. So that's the upswing of him. He had a 2.33 ERA back then in 2010. But of course, he was 25 years old as well. Never eclipsed that 2010 season with the 17 wins. That's his highest career total of wins. And again, the Phillies are probably taking a chance on him. Maybe he'll rediscover his greatness, so to speak. In 2013, he was 12-1. And that's the kind of pitcher that the Phillies are hoping they see in 2017. His ERA back in 13 was only 1.74. So looking at his career in the last 3 seasons have been fairly disappointing with the Red Sox. In 2014, as a 29-year-old, he was 8-11 with a 5.34 ERA. 2015, 7-7. Appeared in 18 games. And, of course, last year, as we were saying, he was 8-10. So hopefully we'll see the better Buchholz show up for the Phillies this new season. And, of course, we're going to have Aaron Nola back for 17 as well. It'll be interesting to see who battles for best pitcher on the Phillies, the ace of the staff, so to speak. But at this point, I don't know if you can really say the Phillies have an ace on this team. I'm sure somebody will emerge, but that is yet to be determined. Of course, Nola, you've got to give the edge to him. He seems like the classiest of the bunch, you know, the most likely to succeed in any event. Of course, the Phillies pitcher coming back for 2017 after signing a qualifying offer, Jeremy Hellickson, could also qualify as your Phillies ace for this upcoming season. And you have Jared Eichhoff coming back. Hopefully he's going to be healthy and consistent for 17. And we have Vince Velasquez. He had a great year last year before leveling off. So the Phillies have some pluses. They have a bunch of talented pitching. If they can remain healthy and they can have a great season, who knows? Maybe the Phillies will surprise people. I know Pete Mackanin had said in the past week or 10 days ago he would be happy if he got a .500 season out of the Phillies this year. And I think that's kind of setting your goals a little low for the Phillies. But if you look at what they've done in the past couple years, then that would be an upgrade. So I'm always one to aim higher, win 85 games if you can, 90 games. But I guess you have to start somewhere with a 500 season. So it'll be interesting to see as the players report in just about 16 days from the time of this show. Pitchers and catchers will be back on the mound, and a couple days following them, the whole team reports. So we'll have many more reports as the time goes on here on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the podcast. Just a little sad note to finish out with. Former Phillies prospect Matt Imhoff retired from baseball at the age of 23 years old. I'm reading an article here by Jerry Krasnick, ESPN senior writer. Imhoff, it says, who began the 26th season with the Clearwater Threshers in Class A Florida State League, was taking part in a routine stretching regimen at Brevard County Stadium in late June when a piece of metal broke loose from a wall and struck him in the face, fracturing his nose, breaking 2 orbital bones, and severely injuring his eye. Of course, he had to lose his right eye because of that accident. It was a terrible tragedy there, and such a strange one as well. But so sad to hear that Matt Imhoff had to retire. He was kind of a prospect for the Phillies. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of Phillies Talk Podcast. Much more to come as the new season is about to dawn, and we're going to be talking some more great baseball talk for the 17th season. Enjoy the Super Bowl, everyone. We'll see you in February on Phillies Talk Podcast.
Say, Elliot, it's more like a dugout around here than a radio studio. Your outfit must be full of baseball fans.
Sure is, Don. Many of us come from Philadelphia, a great town with a great ball club.
You can say that again.
We did. Out at Shard Park for the opening of the World Series, we had the pleasure of serenading the whole park with our own composition, The Fighting Phils.
Heard about that. It's now their official club song.
Sure hope it brings them luck.
Me too. Now, Elliot, in honor of the Phillies, I see that vocalist Danny Ricardo has come aboard for a bit of wishful thinking fit for any baseball fan. It might as well be spring.
Fellas?